Good day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and thank you for allowing us to come into your listening and viewing environment. We are here with you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, broadcasting live from the FijiWater.com sponsored studio, where you can discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship. You can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families. You can discuss dating and relationships, whatever's in your heart and whatever's on your mind. God is concerned about that which concerns you. So we are here with you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast, which is brought to you daily by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock, where the water collects in a natural, sustainable artesian aquifer, where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the blue cap. Fiji water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is not just ordinary water. This is Earth's finest water at FijiWater.com. And for those of you who continue giving on the Give segment of our app at New Life-Delaware, and those of you that have made a weekly or monthly commitment to support the broadcast by giving on the contribution pages of our websites at NewLifeMinistriesInternational.com, NewLifeInternationalCDC.com. We thank you for your support and for your commitment as we fulfill our commitment to God to be here for you in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. I'm going to remind all of our listeners and viewers, we are Facebook Live, we are YouTube Live, we are YouTube Live at Daily Divine Direction, and we want you to stay connected with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're on our internet radio station, WKAP Faith Empowerment Radio, which you can reach us at WKAPfaith.com, where we play music 24 hours a day that will encourage you, empower you, and inspire you to become the best version of ourselves that we can possibly become. So I want to say to all of our listeners and viewers, I want you to stay tuned in to both our broadcast and our internet radio station, because we are going to be running a promo very soon. So I said we were going to do it in the first quarter of this year, and I shared that with all of our listeners and viewers, where one of our listeners and viewers will have the opportunity to win a case of Earth's finest water, Fiji water, at FijiWater.com. Having said that, I said I wasn't going to announce yet exactly what the promo was going to entail, and I wasn't going to announce yet when it's going to take place, but I will tell you this: it will be in the month of February, so you want to stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. We're going to continue doing this, but we are excited about the launch of this promo, so stay with us. It will run for the entire year, and one of our listeners and viewers will have an opportunity to win a case of Fiji water, one case per month. One of our listeners and viewers each month will have an opportunity to win a case of Fiji water. So I want to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you hold your mother responsible for, you said you blame your mother for not showing or teaching you how to have a healthy relationship with a man. You said every relationship she ever had came to an end, and it was, you say, due to your mother's attitude, the treatment of men, and the fact that you said your mother was never really focused on having a good relationship. She was focused on other aspects of the relationship. So listen, I get it. Everybody, first thing you got to remember is no parent is perfect. So that's the first thing you have to remember. And you have to remember in that, you have to remember that someday you're going to find the right relationship because you had the opportunity to break the cycle. So let me be a little more specific about this. You know, we often talk about, which no one likes to talk about, we often talk about generational curses. So sometimes we see things done in the generations before us. We repeat the same thing in our present generation. Then our children repeat the same thing in their generation. That's what is known spiritually as a generational curse. But it can be broken. Now, that's not superstition. That's just an example of saying the children will emulate many times and often will emulate what their parents do. So your issue is that your mother has never had a healthy relationship since she and your father went their separate ways. So you have the opportunity now to break the cycle. So let me tell you what that looks like. And this is for all of our listeners and viewers who might have similar situations or circumstances of life, because remember, you're not alone in this. So here's the reality. The reason you have the opportunity to break the cycle is because you're now an adult. And as an adult, we can often say, you know, this is what my childhood was, and I'm either a product of my childhood environment or I'm a victim of my product environment. But you don't have to remain a victim. You don't have to remain a victim and continue to perpetuate the same cycles. So what that means is that you have now the opportunity to break the cycle. And that means you have to be accountable to yourself and for yourself and say, okay, that was the example that was set for me. The example doesn't lead to a great quality of life. So therefore, I'm going to do something about it. You can't really, first of all, you can't judge your mother because you don't really know what brought her attitude to the point that it was destructive in relationships. So you don't really have the answer for that. The reason you don't have an answer for that is because at the time you were a child. But you do have an answer for creating better circumstances. And the answer is you can make certain that you don't take on the same attitude, that you don't take on the same behavior, and continue to have poor relationships. Now, the reason you blame her right now is because you two have been not having success in relationships. You've been having relationships that come to an end. So you're blaming her. But you can't blame her any longer. See, you can only get away with that at 21, 22. You might say there's some residual of that at 25. But beyond 25, you have to take accountability for your own actions. So those relationships that you were having until now, you have to say, okay, this isn't on my mother, even though that was the behavior I've learned, because you can change your attitude. I'm not asking you to, go back to college and become a neurosurgeon. I'm saying you can make a decision today that you're going to renew your mind and renew your spirit so that you can have a more positive and productive attitude. That's possible. It's not only possible, but it's feasible. You can make a decision today that you're not going to live with the same type of attitude. You're not going to do the same things that your mother has done that has led to poor relationships. So you have to take that responsibility and be accountable to yourself and for yourself. You can decide, make a conscious decision that you are going to have healthy relationships with men. You can make a conscious decision and say, I'm not going to have a bad attitude. You can make a conscious decision today and say, I'm going to change the behavior that I observed and emulate it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make certain that the men I date are going to be men who, well, let me rephrase that. That you're going to be in a relationship for a different reason. So if you're going to be in a relationship for a different reason, that means you're not interested in players. You're interested in someone who is looking to establish a relationship and build a great quality of life. Your mother, unfortunately, was playing the field, so she was playing with players. She was playing against players, trying to manipulate the relationship and get whatever she wanted from the relationship or whatever she felt was good for the relationship. But at the end of the day, it didn't work to her advantage because she hasn't been able to build a great quality of life. You now have to say, okay, here's what my attitude is going to look like. I'm going to have a positive attitude about relationships. I'm going to have a positive attitude about men, that not every man is no good. You know, just because a man is not perfect doesn't mean he's no good. It just means that he's flawed. But as long as he's continued to work on those flaws and become better, you know, you gotta work with that. So you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to have the same attitude. My attitude is going to be positive. I'm going to look at everything from a positive perspective and work with what's in front of me. That's the first thing. I'm going to accept that people are flawed by nature. And I'm going to make certain that I get a man of God. That has to be your attitude, that I get a man who loves the Lord, who has a relationship with the Lord, is working to become the best version of himself that he could possibly become. And I'll work with that. That's where you start. And then you have to make a decision that your behavior is not going to be based on what have you done for me lately. Your behavior is going to be based on what we can do to build a great quality of life. That's where you have to go to break the cycle. That's where you're going to have to dwell within if you're going to break this cycle of having poor relationships. And then I'm going to expound on this a little further about relationships, because I received a lot of communications about relationships. And I'm going to address a lot of what I've heard about relationships, men and women trying to navigate relationships. So I'm going to do that after we do a little business for my sponsors. Because this segment of the broadcast is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. If you are not currently a T-Mobile customer, you may call or text on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will move you into our queue so that you may become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill, and if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, you will receive a discount on your monthly bill. At T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. And this segment of the broadcast is brought to you by PorscheAmerica.com. If you are in the market for a Porsche, one of the finest high-performance automobiles ever manufactured, go to PorscheAmerica.com. You will have the opportunity to virtually build out the type of Porsche you desire to own. And if you are in our area, you can go right to PorscheDelaware.com, ask to speak to Mike Didio, General Manager of PorscheDelaware.com. He will make certain that someone assists you in selecting the Porsche that you desire to own, one of the finest high-performance automobiles ever manufactured. And if you currently own a Porsche, you can go to PorscheDelaware.com. And if you're just in need of service, go to PorscheDelaware.com. Ask to speak to Mike Adams, Service Manager, PorscheDelaware.com. He will make certain that someone schedules an appointment for you, that your vehicle is picked up at your home or office. They will drop off a loaner vehicle to you and return your vehicle to you when your service is completed at PorscheDelaware.com. I'm going to address another communication that came in about a relationship that has been very disruptive in your life. And this is going to help a lot of our listeners and viewers because relationships are difficult to navigate if both parties do not have the right state of mind. So your concern is that you want to move the relationship forward. Your significant or the person you're dating doesn't want to move the relationship forward. He is satisfied with the status quo. And this often happens when two people enter a relationship, one person isn't in the same place and same space that the other person is in. And so I really want to focus on what relationships should look like, because I think there's a misconception. Every relationship is different, but to build a relationship, it really requires the same thing for everyone. Now, I've talked to everyone on our listening and viewing audience about, dating by a different method. I received that revelation from God. I'm going to stand on that revelation because the Bible clearly tells us that, first of all, two can only walk together if they agree. That's the first thing. Second thing is you cannot be unequally yoked. And the last thing is that God created man and woman to be joined together. So let's go through each of those step by step, and that will address your concern. And then we're going to talk a little bit about relationships as a whole. So how can two walk together unless they agree? The very first thing that people have to do, and I'm going to touch on a little bit about the dating revelation again. For the guys out there, if you ask a woman out, ask her to go to church and to lunch with you. If she doesn't want to do that, stop right there. Don't even spend any more time on that person, because you can't walk together in agreement. Because I'm asking all men to walk as men of God. And that is to, I'm going to take you to my church and then out to lunch. And we're going to do that this Sunday. Next Sunday, I'm going to take you to my church and out to lunch. And then the following Sunday, I'm going to take you to church and out to lunch. Because you're going to do that 3 times so that you know for sure if you two can come together on a 7-year plan, 14-year plan, 21-year plan. What are your goals? What are your relationship goals? What are your goals for life for the next 7, 14, and 21 years? You'll have the opportunity to do that by going to church 3 times and out to lunch. Then you can work on what other dating activities you're going to do after that. And if you're a woman and a guy's asking you out, same rules. Have him take you to his church and out to lunch 3 Sundays consecutively, unless he has to be at work. If he doesn't have a church home, I'm not suggesting to you that you get rid of him immediately. If he doesn't have a church home, invite him to your church. And if he's not willing to do that and take you out to lunch 3 times, then stop right there. Just don't spend any more time. Period. Now, how can two walk together unless they agree? You've got to be on the same page, the same state of mind of what you desire to accomplish in a relationship. The goal is first to further getting to know one another after you've had those 3 lunches that will result in your 7-year plan, your 14-year plan, your 21-year plan. And then you have to talk about what life looks like moving forward. What your goal for a relationship is to build a healthy relationship that will then lead to being engaged and then leading to marriage. That's it. That has to be the long-term goal. That has to be the mission that you're on. The mission that you're on in a relationship, the mission should be marriage. It shouldn't be, I just want somebody to hang out with. I just want somebody. See, this is where the differences come in. Because eventually, if a woman's in a relationship for any period of time, she's going to be looking to go to the next level. There's exceptions to every rule, but that's not the rule. For men sometimes are going to be, I'm not looking to move forward in a relationship. I'm just content with the way it is. Well, wrong philosophy. So you got to have the same philosophy. You don't want a man who doesn't want to be a man, who wants to be a player, who just wants to hang out. And here's the litmus test. If a man is interested in a woman, contrary to some of the things that I've seen put out in society, because that's one perspective. But here's the reality. If a man is interested in a woman, he's going to care for that woman. And what that means is, it can't be, he's just not into me, so we're just going to hang out. And you can't just hang out and not realize that he's really not into you. Because men, when we're really into someone, that means we're in. That means we want a relationship. That means we want to eventually get to a place that will lead to marriage, and then hopefully have children, unless you're of age that you're beyond that now, and that's okay, because, life has happened to us all. But if you are young and single, you are, but when you're young and single, the goal should be leading to marriage, and then to having children, if God blesses you with children, to create a legacy, the legacy of God. Now, having said that, so how can two walk together unless they agree? That's first and foremost. You have to be able to walk together in agreement. And to walk together in agreement, you can't be unequally yoked. So that implies that you cannot have two separate visions, first and foremost. Now, we want to marry people who have the same similar interest in life, obviously. There has to be a love of God or a relationship with the Lord. There has to be. And that may look different for some people, and that's okay, because there's scripture about that also. But we generally, Christians are going to marry Christians. From time to time, there'll be an exception to that rule, but there has to be a love of God, because that can lead to the salvation of others. But there has to be a love of God. No love of God, no relationship with the Lord, there's no relationship. It's not feasible to be yoked together equally. That's the next aspect. And then the last aspect is that, the truth be told, is that you have to be man and woman being willing to be joined together, because that's what God ordained. So you have to be willing to be joined together. People need to be working towards marriage. If you want to experience the fullness of God in your life, it's going to require that. You'll find out eventually that you can't do it without him. So you have to get there. Some people will say it in different ways, they'll look at it in different ways, but that's the end result. Because you can't live this life alone and experience the fullness of God. You'll catch some particles. It's nice to catch particles, but not the fullness of God. And then we won't have the opportunity to maximize the fullness of God. Because once you get into the fullness of God, then it's about maximizing. How do I build the legacy of God? How do I get my children prepared for the legacy of God? That's really the premise for good relationships. So we've got to really understand your concern about the relationship you're in right now. To our listener and viewer who sent in that communication, your concern about your relationship right now is you want to move the relationship forward. He doesn't want to move the relationship forward. He's cool right where it is. He's not for you. Because if he was, he'd be on the same page. He'd be able to walk together with you in agreement. And you wouldn't have to lead him into the relationship. He would lead you. He would be able to say to you, this is what we're doing. And you would be willing to accept that. So I'll get into another component about relationships that one of our listeners and viewers sent in, and I'll address that right after I do a little business for our sponsors. This segment of the broadcast has been brought to you by Charles Tyrwhitt, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you're in any of those areas, stop in at their retail stores. They have everything a man could possibly need. And if you are not in any of those areas, you can order from Charles Tyrwhitt at ctshirts.com. And The White Company, located in London, the UK. They also have a store on Fifth Avenue in New York. So if you're in New York, stop in at their retail store. They have everything that you could possibly need: home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. And if you're not in New York, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. They too will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. I'm going to address another communication about relationships that came in from one of our listeners and viewers. And your concern about relationships is that you say men want to lead you, but you don't feel comfortable following them. And you've been told this by more than one man, so I'm going to conclude that because you've been told this, verbally told by more than one man, you're talking about men of God. Men who understand that it's our responsibility to lead. That doesn't mean abuse. That doesn't mean be verbally abusive. That doesn't mean, dictate, be a dictator. What it means is that we lead by example, first of all. But we lead by following God. If we're following God, we know where we're going. And even if we don't know where we're going, we have enough faith. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because Abraham left his homeland, the majority of his family, left the people that he had known all his life, and went to a place that God showed him. God didn't tell him on the day God spoke to him exactly where he was going. He said, I will show you. And then he told him. But Abraham was willing to go. He was willing to go by faith. So even if he doesn't know exactly, and when I say that, I don't mean he doesn't have a plan. He's just okay if God adjusts the plan. Even if he's not positively certain that at certain intervals he's going to be in this position, and certain intervals you're going to be in that position, but he does have a plan, but he's okay with God adjusting the plan. So you may not know every place that God is going to take you, because remember, God does exceeding abundantly above all you can ask or think, according to the power of God that works in you. So he's willing to put in the work. And when a man tells you, all I want you to do is follow me and walk with me on the journey, I'm going to follow God. So if you've been told that he wants to lead you, and you know this is a man of God, but you're not willing to follow, you're not ready. You're not ready to be a wife. You're not ready to be in a relationship that leads to marriage. So if you don't want to follow, then you just aren't simply ready. And you're going to have to get to the place where you're ready, so that when the man of God comes who is ready to lead you again, not the same man, because he's going to move on.